Hi, I'm Robert.
And I'm John. And we're
Welcome.
the Generation X Men.
Wow. I love it. How you doing? Not Sunday. Welcome,
Yeah.
Campbell. Appreciate it. Let's get this show rocking. Here we go. Bam.
Hi,
All
guys.
right.
Thank you
Hi.
so much for having me. How do I live up to that intro? Are you kidding?
How you
Rob
doing?
and John spanned the Milky Way to find me hidden on another planet and dug me out for this podcast. How is everyone?
Good.
Doing
How are
great.
you?
Very tired. Very tired.
Yeah, it's been a long weekend.
Well, and it's been a long month. You guys are well aware. I've got this Kickstarter going, and there's
Absolutely.
never enough time to take care of everything that you want to do for it. But it's going well. I'm doing really good.
Right. Great.
Good. Good.
You are our first guest ever.
Yes, ever.
So
Number one.
welcome as being our third wheel. So
Well, I know a few things about comics, so I can happily chime in and say some stuff. So
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I had you on the Nerdy Collective like a year ago.
Yeah, and
I
I
was
didn't
late.
learn my lesson. Came right back.
so I'm surprised you came back. So.
Oh.
How do you think I feel? No, it was a good time. Of course, I came back, and so I was kind of excited to know that there's another show. John, you and I hadn't met.
No, we hadn't.
We get to talk about
I can't
comics.
stay up for the Nerdy Collective and.
No, and John knows. I talk to him all the time. He's a good buddy, and I was telling him about you, so I'm like, I'm going to put him on the show. So I hope you're ready.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely. I like you, Stuart. I'm sorry. Your art's beautiful and fantastic. I really want you to right now. I put the link of your Kickstarter in the email, and it's also in the descriptions down below. So everything you want to know, and you're gonna talk about that in 2 seconds.
Of course I am.
I got a bunch of stuff. I was doing a little bit of homework. So I got some pictures and stuff. We'll talk about you as well. But please tell the public about yourself and what you're doing.
So if you don't know me, my name is Stuart Sayger. I've been drawing comics for about 20 years. So it's been a long time. My first comic book that I ever did was called Shiver in the Dark. It was a book that I self-published in 2001. I'm trying to dig out one of the original copies to show you. I actually put out 3 issues of the book, and it sold pretty well. I was busy working on the 4th issue when I ended up getting hired by DC Comics to do some stuff for them. They actually approached me to do a bunch of trading cards for them. And then very quickly, almost immediately after that, I got hired to work with them on the Lego Bionicle comic book. So if you are not a Generation X, but a little bit younger, you probably grew up reading my Bionicle comic books. I did that for a couple of years. But then one thing led to another, and I ended up doing comics for IDW. I'm presently doing a whole bunch of covers for Dynamite. If you go to the comic rack right now, you'll find my covers on Kiss, the Gene Simmons band, Army of Darkness and Evil Ernie, and I'm doing a new series that they haven't even announced right now. I've done G.I. Joe, Transformers, Walking Dead, worked on the Man of Steel movie.
You worked on the Man of Steel movie?
Yeah, I did about 22 pieces of art. They were all, so they were for two things. I did a lot of pieces that were designed to sort of serve as CGI guides, like the first time that Zod gets his powers and his eyes turn on. They had me sort of draw what that would look like so that the CGI people would render it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but what's cooler, I think, I mean, that was fun, was they had me draw a bunch of promotional artwork for it. So about a month or so, 2 weeks, something like that, before the movie came out, I can remember, I was at Target doing some shopping and turned the corner and there's a display of backpacks. And there's my Man of Steel art on the backpack for all the kids. And then, there were coffee mugs and it was on cereal boxes and everything. So I did all this advertising, loads of T-shirts. That was cool. They actually, Warner Brothers was happy enough with that they had me do a bunch of T-shirt work for Batman villains and Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman clothing as well. So
nice.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the first time I saw any of it was the worst thing. I knew that they were making it, right? But you never know exactly what day it's going to be released. I was at a convention, and I try to spend my time working, talking with as many people as I can. If you're busy, you don't really have time for lunch break, so I was trying to cheat and eat this hamburger very quickly at my booth, and somebody walked by wearing a T-shirt with my art on it that I'd never seen. And I kind of reached out and grabbed this guy with a mouthful of food, and he's like, "Okay, what's this about?" He had to wait for me to chew, and I said, "Please tell me where you got that shirt." And it wasn't, anything that difficult. He kind of looked at it and said, "I think it came from Walmart." Right. And I said, "Okay, well, I need to get one of those." And I explained to him I drew it, and then me grabbing a stranger made a lot better sense. Then it was okay. Yeah.
By the way, congratulations on making the 20,000 mark. That's excellent.
Oh, we got there today. Yeah. So it unlocked another what's it called? Stretch goal. Yeah. Everybody who is a comic book backer is going to get a sticker, a nice big vinyl sticker. Don't know which one you're going to get. I got several that I made for.
Oh, I like that. That one on the hood is really cool too. You do a really good job with the eyes.
Wait a minute, those are all the same. That one's good.
Yeah, that one. Good. That one, yep, that one I like too.
And she's pretty. Yeah, so that's pretty minor. The big thing we got to was at $16,000, which we passed a while back. It triggered that everybody who's a backer is going to get a bonus art book of unpublished art from the series. And then if we can get to $25,000, which I think we can, I'm going to add bonus pages to that book yet still.
Very cool, very cool.
Yeah. Why don't I tell you about the book properly, though?
Please do.
So, let's see. Let me find some of the best covers. So there's an A set of covers and there's a B set of covers. I had all this stuff laid out to me, and you and I got talking about it, and I screwed up all my stacks.
You're good.
So, let's see. This is issue 2, cover A. This is issue 3, cover A. This is issue 1, cover B. Issue 2, cover B. Issue 3, cover B. And there are several hand-drawn covers you can buy as well that look like this.
Now, I know what it's about, but a lot of people don't. Just kind of give a quick synopsis of who she is and what it's about. So don't tell them everything, no.
Oh, I can't do that. No, here's the one I was looking for. This is the cover 1A, if you back the Kickstarter. So what it is it's a comic I wrote, drew, lettered, colored, published. It's a horror comic book, but I wanted to do a horror comic that was a little bit different than a lot of stuff I was seeing in that I made this book before there was 30 Days of Night, before there was Walking Dead. There were no horror comics. There were a lot of horror movies, but they all were sort of like forces of evil and sort of helpless, innocent victim. And I thought that was kind of dumb and played out. So I wanted to write a story about a comic book that instead of the girl being sort of nice and sweet and innocent, what if she was kind of rotten and self-serving and maybe a little evil already? And then that kind of person and that kind of disposition is better prepared to sort of deal with and handle and outmaneuver and manipulate, the demonic forces that she encounters. And in the end, maybe better than, maybe she makes a better recruit than a victim. Okay. Right. So it's the story about this rich girl who encounters this used book at a bookstore, and she kind of on a whim decides she'd like to buy it. And the owner looks at it and says, I don't recognize this book. I don't even know what to, charge you for this, but it's this really old thing. And because she's kind of used to getting her way, she kind of decides, I came here, I tried to buy it. This is a bookshop. I tried to pay you for it. You shouldn't have it here if it's not for sale. So she steals it. And upon doing that, she kind of really has to give up any sort of claim of innocence. Yeah, the book sort of opened the door to a lot of bad things that happened to her, but she brought it upon herself.
Good.
And
there you go.
And maybe the things that she's exposed herself to now are greater punishment than the crime, but you still are responsible for your actions. So that's the basic framework of it. I can tell you that I came out with the first issue. I debuted it at a Wizard World Chicago around 2001, and I was very fortunate. It sold really well, and I happened to be cat a corner from Diamond Comic Distributors,
Right.
and they just came over and they just said, what's this book you have here? We haven't seen it before. And I told them I just made it, like it just came out. And I said, they asked if I had submitted it to them. And I told them that I hadn't, because frankly, I was an independent and it's a little bit hard to get some traction there. And they said, well, we watched you sell it well all week. We'd love to carry it.
You did.
So that was great.
You also did something special with that cover too, don't you? Didn't you?
With this cover?
Yeah. Didn't you make don't you have like a virgin?
Yeah,
cover?
I do. You're giving out all the good secrets. So here's the thing. And we're going to give one away, right?
If you'd like, yeah, absolutely.
I would. So here's the rub on this.
Our chat's a little slow right now.
I like the Kickstarter campaign. It's pretty great. I should tell you, this is a 20th anniversary collection of these comic books. I reprinted the first 3 comics that came out all those years ago, but I'm relaunching the series later this year with an all-new second series that picks up where the first 3 left off. Okay. The situation there is, though, I realized the book was 20 years old. I had a lot of art that I hadn't printed from the previous series, and a lot of people hadn't seen it. So the Kickstarter that's up right now is a 20th anniversary collection of the original first 3 books, reprinted. They've got new covers, new inside covers, new back covers, bonus pages per issue. They are in this really big deluxe square-bound edition set. These are the books themselves. So they're really heavy. They're like 4.5 ounces each, whereas like a new Spawn is under 2 ounces, I think. So they're really robust. But the thing is, because it's a commemorative edition, yeah, there it is. Because it's a commemorative edition, there are only 300 sets made. And while I like that, and the Kickstarter is working great for fans, the one group of people that really gets left out that I couldn't figure out how to incorporate them more was comic shops and other people who are retailers. And so to get here to where this book was successful, to where my career would take off, I really needed help of lots of people over the last 20 years. A lot of comic shops, comic conventions, different people in the industry. They had the opportunity to help me out. One of the people who I was reminded of was Clydeen Nee. And Clydeen runs Artist Alley at the San Diego Comic-Con. When I was just getting started, I sent her a copy of one of my books and said, I'd love to be in Artist Alley. And she said, this looks great. We're going to get you in. So for all of those kind of people, I made this book. And you can see it's the same as the regular #1, but no logos. And I only made a few more than 100 of these. And this is a book I am not selling. Do not ask to buy it from me. The only way to get one of these is for me to give it to you. I've been giving these away to shop owners, to, like I said, convention promoters who've helped me out. You're definitely going to get, what's that? Robert, you're getting one.
Thank you.
Yes. We're going to give one of these away. But the funny thing about it is, and this is what's so interesting, I made these and I really brought them to a lot of the comic shops that had helped me and promoted me. And I said to them, look, you've been a really good, nice guy to me. A lot of comic shop owners, they've been doing it for 20, 25 years. They have their thing that they're in love with and they want to collect. But fundamentally, they're there to sell comic books. Sure. So I said, I made this for you to sell it. Make money off of it. If you take this and you keep it and put it in your collection, that's fine. But I designed it so you can make money because I got here because you helped me. So the funny thing is, I've been giving these to people, and I've yet to find one that's come up for sale. I keep looking on eBay, and I know
$1 million.
I don't know, and I'm telling you, I'm not selling them. So if I give you one, and Robert, you want to sell it, then you sell it, and that's fair because that's what it's designed for.
That's not him.
So, but I am going to give one away here. We need to figure out a way to do that. I'm going to leave that to you. If you guys want to do it on a future episode of G-Men or something like that, we can do that.
We'll do it on John's show. We could do that.
Okay, we can do it on John's show.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But you're going to tell me who won it, and I'm going to mail it out. It's going to come signed. It has a certificate of authenticity. And
I actually do
truly,
a giveaway in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
if you win this and you say, Stuart, I hate your comics, I'm going to sell it, I hope you make a lot of money off of it. I mean, it's designed to do that.
Oh,
Okay.
All right. When we look at the page, I'm going to share the screen again.
Please do.
And back this out. Okay. No, let's do it this way. What's better, John? This way? Yeah.
Look at that.
All right. So when we go to the top, there's a whole video there. So make sure you guys pay attention. It's really
You
good.
guys might recognize that background.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And then you got your entry points here.
It's pretty easy. I will tell you this. In addition to the things you saw there, I'll show this up. I made my first ever metal covers.
That is super cool.
I love that. See,
How do you like
beautiful.
my panel lamp back there?
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. Okay, so
Um,
tell people how they can get it, just out of curiosity, because I'm
So you
curious.
just go to Kickstarter and look up shiverinthedark.com or Shiver in the Dark. You'll find it that way. But here's the funny thing, and I need to explain this, and this is a little important. Because the comic books are limited, there's only 300 sets of cover A and 150 of cover B. Lining everything up to make it work on Kickstarter was a little tricky because my items are limited.
Right.
I can't just have an infinite number of add-ons. At some point, I could conceivably have somebody order more books than I've got. So what had to happen then is the metal covers had to appear as add-ons.
Okay.
So there's like a $5 buy-in thank you option, and if you only want a metal cover, you can buy that, and it will load up the metal covers and other things like that. But I will tell you, one of the other really cool things that's on the Kickstarter campaign that I have to plug, because
Sure.
I'm
Go ahead.
too proud of it, is two things, and they're related to one another. One is that I did make blank sketch covers, so this is hand drawn,
Yeah,
and so is this one.
Yeah,
And
I
so
love
you
the
can-
eyes on that one.
Oh, they're both good. I have to be honest. Even though I make them all, I do have favorites. I think I like this one a little bit better. But I made several of them. They're all different. And here's another one. And I'm actually drawing these things in advance because nobody wants to wait on their books. So I've already booked printer time. I honestly think I'm going to be able to mail out all the Kickstarter stuff within 7 to 10 days of the end of the end of the campaign. But here's what's cool. When you get an original sketch cover, these are $300 on the Kickstarter, and USA shipping is free. Look what else you get with it. This is really cool. They come encapsulated by CBCS, graded, and if you look closely, that's a custom StuartSayger.com label.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the first custom label that CBCS has done?
Yeah, and I think it's as far as a standing label. So I think between CBCS and CGC, there have been labels where maybe they did a one-day signing with Stan Lee, and if you got your book signed that day, you'd get a custom label. But as far as a label created for an artist that is a standing thing, if I submit a book, I can get it in this label. If you want my book submitted in that label, we can do that as part of the Kickstarter. However, if you take one of my comic books and you mail it in, you can't get that label. And the reason we designed it that way is that we can mark all the comics sold as part of this Kickstarter as being the Kickstarter pedigree.
I got you.
I like it.
Yeah, it's a really cool upgrade. I will tell you, everybody at CBCS was really good to work with. I contacted them.
So
all you have to do is thank Steve. Everybody in that company is named Steve.
Yep.
he is a great guy.
Yep.
Borok's been great. Paulus is great. Ricketts has been great. The funny thing is, I called them about this probably, it was well over a year ago, and we spent about 6 to 9 months going back and forth talking about what should the label look like, how should we handle submissions, what are the edges of it, how are we going to make sure it's run properly. And I'm really flattered because while I really wanted to do it, they also had to pick me because we're partnered now. You know, I'm to some extent repping them and they're repping me. But the thing that was really, really cool about it, and one of the things I liked about the company, I talked about this last night, was this is actually a prototype book. So this looks like this is the cover to number 3 of the Shiver in the Dark campaign because it looks like it's the same book there, but the back cover is different.
Ooh.
And I did it that way intentionally because this was one that I had made up just so we could get a sample. I sent them this, and I sent them a blank cover, and they sent both of them back to me. Now, here's what was really cool. We ran a campaign promoting this series where you could win one of these blank covers. And I did it, and I mailed it off to them. And they called me, and they just basically wanted to know, was the new blank cover that I made the same as the blank cover that they had encapsulated as the promo? And they weren't. And I told them they weren't. And what was so cool was they called me to make sure that all of this was right, so the label was accurate. Right. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but that means that they took the time to make sure everything was just right, that the label's accurate.
Exactly.
They're the only ones I use. So
yeah.
Well, I love them. They've treated me well, and I like the case.
The cases,
so do we.
Incredible.
The new cases are excellent.
Yeah, they're really good. I've been very pleased with them. I have to say, I think they had an unfair advantage though, and that is this, because Steve Borak founded CGC.
Yes.
Right? And
nobody pays attention to that.
So the unfair advantage is he learned everything they did right and everything they did wrong, and then he filed it away in his head.
He created the grading scale.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah.
So he then got to, when the new case was made, anything he wanted, any bell or whistle that they wanted to add on, they had a fresh start to do that.
Right.
Now I'm poking fun at him because the reality is I like it. You know, it's this was the research and development that got to where we had a nice new case.
Right.
Simi, she's another artist out in the community.
Hey, how are you, Simi? Have we met? I always try to meet all the artists who do this stuff. So
she did a lot of this. She did that John Wick that I got up here.
I see it. Yeah, that's nice.
She did The Crow. I got a crow back there. She did, and she did a couple other ones for me. She's really good.
Right on. I'm James O'Barr and I aren't super tight, but every time I see him at a show, we always talk, and I would absolutely call him my friend. And it's funny because since getting to know him, anytime somebody draws a crow drawing, I always have to look at it because there are really only two people who drew the crow. There's James O'Barr and everybody else. Yep. It's such a personal piece. It's kind of hard to do right. So when I get asked to do the crow, I take a deep breath because you have to.
Yeah. What he did. Yes, I agree. Agree.
True.
There's only been a couple that I've seen that have actually done it okay. So absolutely.
I drew a really nice commission of the crow for somebody on I don't remember when it was a year or two ago, but I showed it on my Facebook page, right? And I marked him in it, and he liked it enough that he shared it. And I thought, okay,
tell people about your Facebook and what you do on there, because you do a lot of I don't do a lot of Facebook. I am showing this video on Facebook as well as we speak, so I'm streaming to two places. But I know you do a lot of stuff on Facebook, and that's how I came across you one day. Just happened to be looking at video streams, and you popped up that day a couple years back, and I was like, wow, who is this guy?
Well, so
and you were showing Golden Age books that day on a table. Yeah, so we were talking about them, and I loved it.
My show is crazy. So every other Thursday, it's usually the second and the fourth. Usually the second and the fourth Thursday of the month, I'll do a show. Now, during the Kickstarter, it's been every Thursday, and whenever else I feel like, okay, I have something to announce. Sure. But I usually come on Thursdays at 8, and I usually have 3 things that I do during the course of the show. Definitely 2. Right. So the first thing is I usually do some sort of like history lesson or something about something in comic books. And I was surprised the one that I did that I thought was the goofiest, that I thought no one is going to be into this, that I got so many messages they liked. I did one on the history of comic book bags, which I thought was going to be an absurd topic, but a lot of people don't really understand. You know, here's the funny thing: in the 70s, comic book bags were so expensive. Yeah, you can find ads in Overstreet, the price guide in the early 70s, that said, you know, when a new comic book would have been $25, 100 comic book bags would have been $3. That is a fortune, right? Yeah. But here's what was happening. We also had OPEC. There was an oil crisis, gasoline and oil shortage, and so plastics went through the roof and were expensive. We also almost always only had bags that came out of the United States, so there was no overseas manufacturing, and we didn't use as many of them, so there wasn't this big production. But anyway, I gathered all this research and I laid out bags from different manufacturers, and all these people wrote me, and it was kind of like this breath where everybody said, I'd heard about the history of X-Men. I'd heard about the history of whatever Jack Kirby, but this one was new. So I felt happy about that. So there's always a history lesson. I usually show off some new art or some project I'm working on, and then I end the show by doing a live drawing. I have a little camera I pull over and tell jokes, and my wife helps me. And
I love
it. My number one thing is I say, this is a hobby. And so the number one thing that everybody's looking for is, just entertain me. And and I've had people come in and they say, my favorite part is the drawing or my favorite part is the history lesson. But if they like it all, they'll watch it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's fun. But here's the thing. I grew up working in a comic shop. And so you guys don't know this, but before this show started, Robert and John and I were all sort of, making sure that our mics worked and talking to one another. And I was looking at everything over John's shoulder right back there on that wall. And I was like, okay, see an X-Men 4, there's an X-Men 266, Secret Wars 8. I can never remember the number of the first appearance of Carnage there, but I think it's something like 367, Amazing 195. I grew up with this stuff. I love it.
Right.
It's easy. It's easy if you love it.
Of course.
Most importantly, you got the first Peter Porker. So
the
first Spider Ham.
I got that when I was new, and my mom was looking at it, and she laughed out loud. And it's in the Goose Rider story. Goose Rider is in a movie theater with his head flaming, and I think this kid says, "Mommy, why is that man's head on fire?" And his mom says, "Like Johnny, don't point. It's rude." Right. Yeah. Well, when you can get your mom to laugh, that's a pretty good comic.
Yep.
Anyway, I can keep going. I got lots of stuff to show you. I have other comics I've worked on. One of my favorite things to talk about is this is one of my favorite characters to draw. I've done a lot of exclusive variants. I did 3 exclusive variants for the Joker. He's pretty good looking. I think I said I'm working on Evil Ernie right now. This was the number 1 I did for the series.
Right.
And a lot of people ask me how I make this stuff. And I will tell you, one of the things I do that's different than a lot of people who draw comics is my pieces are usually all digitally colored, but sometimes they're or not sometimes, very regularly, they're almost like black and white paintings that I digitally color. I'll stack my black and white ink and paint on top of each other. Let's see if I can show you a good example of what that would look like. Well, I think here's a Batman I did. This is an original.
Okay.
But if you look closely, it's got some places where I've actually sort of painted in the cape and such.
Right.
Hal Foster, the creator of Prince Valiant, always said if you want an area that's white, you draw around it. And I would say, it's too much work. I'll paint the whole area black and I'll put white back on top of it. But by layering them, it allows me to do some really nice, like smoky effects. Like that lighting, that glow that's on her, that's paint that's white paint on top of the black. And so I can really kind of cut loose. I'll show you another thing. So I have a portfolio here of some.
So is more of the black and white, is that more of your favorite medium, or
do
you like?
It's when I'm in rhythm. It's when I really just sort of catch up, and it's like I'm lathered up, and I'm
Quick question for you, buddy.
It's Jimi Hendrix doing a guitar solo.
Boom.
Yeah.
Right there. Campbell is asking, how long does it take you to do a cover?
I can usually do one in a day. Now, I don't want to do it in a day. I usually like to do it in 3 days. And those 3 days usually break out down to like this. So I'll pencil and ink it in a day. And then I'm not the fastest colorist. I kind of noodle at things too much. So I will color it on day 2. And then day 3 is spent largely not looking at it. And then at the end of the evening, I'll come back and I'll sort of say, okay, what looks right? What looks wrong? Kind of try to give it fresh eyes. But you know what? Sometimes I've been in rhythm. I've had 1 or 2 comic book covers where I made the whole thing magically, like no line was out of place. Nothing went wrong. And it's almost like you're in a trance, and it's like, 3 or 4 hours later, you went from a blank page to this finished thing. But that's like winning the lottery. That doesn't happen that often. And here's the other thing. Nobody ever remembers this. I don't show you the pieces that don't turn out well. I mean, there are some that are, clunkers. They're in the other room. They're here.
Now you did say that, you started off on Bionicle, or that was one of your early titles. And even though we may be a little older, I did have kids.
So did
you
I.
go.
My son was into it.
Thus, I
Yeah.
had a lot of those Bionicles laying around my house, and every time we'd go, "Hey, can I get this one?" I don't know.
Right.
No. Yeah. Legos are
That's a
expensive.
great
No.
dad answer.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, when I go to shows a lot these days, and I'm fortunate enough that I get to meet a lot of fans. By virtue of drawing so many covers these days, I have a lot of fans who will bring me things to sign. But I will tell you this, I've gotten good at this. I can spot a Bionicle fan.
Right.
I can tell they grew up reading it. And the funny thing is, only a couple times in my life have I had a fan really, really excited to meet me. Like, you can tell they're just on edge. And it happened. It happened again to me only a couple weeks ago. I was in Elkhart for the Hall of Heroes Comic Con. I was talking to somebody, and there was a girl who was probably about 20, 22.
Sure.
And she had a book and a bag and a board, and she was really excited. And I just said, "Hey, we can continue this conversation, but I'll bet this is a Bionicle fan waiting to see me." She couldn't believe that I could figure it out, but I just knew. You could just tell. And then one of the coolest things that happens, if you get to sign a book at a convention, there's nothing more flattering than when a guy brings up a book and he loves your art and he pulls it out of this expensive Mylar and he's really ginger with it. That's great.
Yep.
But the other thing that Bionicle gives me that I love so much is when someone opens up their bag and board and they pull out this tattered rag. That was the book that they read when they were 5, and they
loved it.
Yeah, and they absolutely loved it. And they said, "Oh, look," they're like, "I read this all the time. I know the covers come off." And I said, "It just tells me you love it. You know, what's your name?" We doctored them up.
Damn, that's awesome.
And those are the best. Like, I've got, I know the comics that I had when I was little. I can look at the copy because I remember the folds. I've bought nice ones to replace them because they're books I loved. But my Micronauts #1 from 1979, I restapled that cover like 3 or 4 times on there. I mean, it was that or it wasn't going to stay on.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
I need to send that to CGC, like or CBCS, one of them. Try to grade this. And by the way, I'm going to draw something on it to make it a difficult pedigree, just to make it hard.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Micronauts.
Well, you were awesome last night on Wink Inc. Wink Inc., my buddy that I had he was a guest for last night's Nerdy Collective, and you were on his show. That was excellent. Good
we had
stuff.
a good time. I pulled out. Did I show a colored Joker on this piece? I don't think I did, because I wanted to pull out new art for you guys.
Yes,
you asked me how long it takes to make these things.
Yep.
And I do like to typically draw them in black and white and color them on the computer, but sometimes I will tell you, as great as the computer is, it always looks like the computer to me. Everybody says, "Oh, you can do something that looks like it's not a computer." I can't. If I want it to look like a painting, I have to paint it. So this is a color Joker that is actually, I'll tip my camera here so you can get a better look at it. You can get up really close to it. I mean, this is acrylic paint on paper. And to get all this atmospheric effect up here, I really had to, get in there and smear the paint around and use real mediums. It's interesting. His polka dotted tie is just a paint marker that I just put dots all over it. But then to make it not look flat, like it's standing on top, I had to glaze paint on top of the dots to bind it all together. So it's a process.
Yeah.
But nice. that's if you want it to look like that, that's how I have to do it. But I've done a few covers that were rendered completely in paints. They're fun.
Thanks, Dusty.
How are you, Dusty? Everybody's got these great names. Splash Page Comics. It's like
that's Mr. White Gloves.
That's Mr. White Gloves. He's usually my co-host on my show.
he won't touch a book without putting on his gloves.
Is that so?
You would be marveled at his collection.
Yeah, his collection's amazing.
Can I tell you the time I didn't wear gloves? It was very funny. I shouldn't even tell you the story. So this is a fun story. I did a presentation for the Children's Museum of Indianapolis.
I remember
and that's a really big museum, and they were having a big comic book art exhibit, and they asked me to come on and be a consultant for it. Yep. And so they had me come back into their what do you call it? Their holdings. They had lots of things, and they were trying to pick out what they want to display. And they had a table where they were processing things, entering it into their catalog of their holdings. And there was an X-Men #4 laying there on the table. It's the first Scarlet Witch.
Right.
And I didn't know, I should have known, you're supposed to be wearing gloves to handle all this. But I looked down and I picked it up and I said, oh, yeah, this is a pretty good book. Let's see what grade it is. And I opened it up out of the bag. Someone had donated this out of their collection. And I pulled it out and I was looking it over, grading it, kind of like this. And they said, okay, listen, we didn't say anything. And those formally haven't been cataloged. Once something's into the catalog, you're supposed to wear gloves. And this woman is very kind to me. Now, here's what's funny about it. Here's the payoff. She said, it formally hasn't been cataloged yet, so technically you haven't broken the rules by touching it. And I said, oh, gosh, I'm terribly sorry. So I picked up the bag to put it back in it, and I looked at the bag, and I said, well, if it makes you feel any better, the sticker here is from the Comic Carnival, and that's my handwriting, so I priced it when the person bought it. I've already handled it. I handled it and priced it up, so it's put it away. And we all had a laugh at that, but it was very weird to go to this, this lovely institution and pick up a book and you're like, that's my handwriting. So.
Right there. You're getting splash page all. It's his own work. He can touch his own books if he wants to. Yeah, he has a thing about
Okay, so here's the best. If you like that splash page, you're going to love this story. I was in Toronto and I bought the most beat up, destroyed Batman #6 in the world. So it's a really old book. It sounds like it's expensive. It is not, because someone had trimmed all the 3 sides, but not before they took the cover off and they laminated it. Okay. Now, yes, they laminated it with this soft laminate, so it wasn't shiny.
Yeah.
And I remember when I put my hands on it, I said, what happened to this book? It seems so weird. And I had to do detective work and figure it out. And I showed it to Peter Dixon, who is a big Golden Age dealer. And even he's like, something happened to this. What is it? Everybody took a little while to figure it out. But if you couldn't handle it, you couldn't really tell that it had this plastic on the cover. So I had that book in Toronto, and I intentionally did this. I would leave it on my table, and I would put my big sweaty bottle of Coca-Cola on it. Like, it was so great to see everybody panic, because somebody would say something like, oh, did you get my Batman commission done? I said, oh yeah, let me see it. And I would just put that down like I wasn't paying attention to it. And everybody freaked out. But I mean, you could literally just wipe it off on your shirt. I mean, I promise you, it was just plastic on that cover. There was nothing you could do to it. I probably could have written on it with a marker and rubbed it off.
I
love to see the horror faces. Yes.
Since usually things don't kick up until like a half hour, almost a half hour in. Let's see here. There is, okay. I have some pictures I actually loaded up here from some of your stuff of the past. Why don't you tell the public about this? I love this picture, Stuart. I'm sorry. I think this would be a cool poster, especially if you had it signed.
Hang on. I got to zoom back in again so I can see. Oh, that one. Yeah, I can tell you about that. So that's a lot of fun.
Total Dexter right there. I love it.
Yeah, it is total Dexter. Those all
that
are. So
there.
I got so many good. So first of all, I like that. My hair looked good and I was thinner. I was younger. It was great. So here's what happened. I was asked by IDW to make a comic book based on the Machete movie, the Robert Rodriguez movie.
Right. And
that, because the movie was coming out, there was a local sort of weekend newspaper that was out of Indiana that this is how small the world is. They thought it would be newsworthy to make a story that this local person was drawing this comic based on this movie. It ended up that the photographer had been the old roommate of an ex-girlfriend. Right. Okay. So I come in and she writes me and she says, hey, this is Michelle. Do you want to come do a photo shoot for this? And I said, sure. So I came in and she had this machete as a prop. And she said, I mixed up this blood. Do you want to, this might be too much for you. Are you willing to hold a machete for a photo shoot? Will you, can we put blood on it? And she was kind of crossing her fingers. And I said, oh, this is a great idea. I said, why don't we just cover myself in the blood too? Let's make it really,
Yeah.
I mean, we wanted a good image, and she kind of lit up. She said, really? And I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. She had told me to wear a white T-shirt because it's easy to colorize if they want to do anything odd with it. And I said, well, let's just douse myself in it. And so we did the whole thing up. And awesome. There are other photos of me where I'm licking the blood off my lips. And But here's the best part of the story. My wife, who at the time wasn't my wife, I had met we got talking and we were getting to know each other. And she does what any smart person does in the modern age. When you meet somebody you might go on a date with, you say,
Background check.
I'll look them up on the internet. They might be an axe murderer. So she looked on the internet, and the first photo she found of me was that I was not an axe murderer, but I was, in fact, a machete murderer. That was the first picture she saw of me on the internet.
Really?
Yeah. And I will tell you, I had so much fun on that photo shoot, and Michelle did a great job, and she also did the photo manipulation to make it look sort of Dextery Sin City-like. I mean, I got all the photos, and I said, we can do this, but you got to give me everything. And they look wonderful. So thanks, Michelle.
Yay!
Yeah.
Big shout out.
And it didn't scare my wife away. I mean, if you can, you can have that be your lead foot, and the girl side decides she wants to marry you, you're in good standing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. So
I'm so glad you found that, though.
On the same note, hold on. I'm curious about what this is here. Here we go. I'm trying to get it so we all line up on one side. I don't know why it's not working right, John. I'm having a hard time with that. There we go.
Okay, so thankfully, this is not a photo that I'm a part of.
Okay.
But I had this is a photo that appeared on the internet, and I talked about it a little bit on my live show because I was doing a Facebook presentation that I think was about the history of comic book conventions in Indiana, if my memory serves correctly.
Okay.
And so I got to tell you, whenever I see photos like this of these old comic book shows, they break my heart because I went to my first one in 1978 when I was about 6. Right. And any dealer that had their booth set up like that then, that was the biggest dealer in the room. Nobody did anything like that. Wow. If you look at old photos, people would have like a page of original, X-Men art by John Byrne, and they'd tape it to the wall, and it would say $20. And there were no racks, and there were lots of things that weren't in bags. And I just have barely the littlest echo in my brain of Comic Cons looking like that.
So speaking of Comic Cons, do you do any? Are you going to any? Are you at any coming up?
Several. So the big one is going to be, the next one is going to be not this weekend, which we're just ending, but next weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm going to be at the Lexington Comic Con. It's the Lexington Toy and Comic Convention.
Right.
They actually have a lot of toys there, more toys than I would expect it to be at a Comic Con, but more than enough comic stuff to keep you entertained. And they've got a good guest list this year. I can't remember everybody involved, but I think Kevin Eastman's going to be there. And then a guy I'm really looking forward to finally meeting, Larry Hama.
Oh, yeah, I met him.
He's the creator of G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe.
And I've done 3 G.I. Joe variant covers, and I guarantee you I'm getting at least 3 signatures from this man. So it's actually kind of exciting because I looked at the map, and his table is actually opposite me and then over one. So we're going to see each other all weekend. And so I wouldn't be surprised if people are going to bring stuff back and forth between us.
Here's what you do when you
tell me
there and across from Larry Hama's table. Go ahead and go over to his table. He does sketches. He will whatever character you want. When we saw him a couple years ago at where was that? Heroes? No, Heroes? No. It was in Raleigh. And
I know that show.
They changed, it's Galaxy now, but it was something else then. And I had a Destro done, and I had a Snake Eyes with Timber done, and then a Wild Weasel who was the A10.
I know him.
Yep.
So I had one done for one for each for 3 of my sons.
That's cool.
And they weren't super overpriced. They were like $50-$60 for a original sketch. It was great.
Well,
you got to get on the list because he only does so many in a show, and
I believe that. And I will tell you, I will not only try to get on that list, but I wouldn't be surprised if we can work out some sort of trade. Because
but he was really neat. I think now, and speaking of him, and I know it's a little off topic, but what was it? I'm drawing a blank on the character that they actually made based upon him because he was the artist.
I forgot. Right.
It was Tunnel Rat.
Right.
Tunnel Rat was the character that they based off of him.
So yeah, this is the thing that it seems so obvious, but it's got to be stated. I think most people here have seen like the Netflix show that the what's it called? The toys that made us.
The toys. Yeah, it was excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. So it's covered in there. They ask him to sort of come up with this toy line, and he comes back with this library of characters. Yeah. And apparently, without Hasbro asking for it, he came up with code names. He came up with explanations of who they are, and the file card, and all that. And it's like,
wow.
I'm glad that he's getting the recognition, because that thing would not be the same without him.
No.
And
no. The figures and everything.
Yeah.
Because now you're talking about Generation X stuff.
Me too. Yeah, I'm here.
The G.I. Joe figures, I remember going to the store going, "Oh my God, can I have this one?
Yep.
Please."
Yeah. I remember I went to one store, and there was a case on the floor that they hadn't put out for sale, and it had the Baroness and Storm Shadow and who is it? Saboteur, who's that? Firefly. That whole set. And I was like, my God, they're not stickered. Yeah. And I was like, I haven't seen any of these. Like, back then there weren't commercials and things like catalogs, like previews to tell you what was coming. And I looked at all of them, and I remember, was like, man, what am I going to get? And I remember, here's what happened. It was this weird sensation. I'm glad that I had the forethought to do this when I was like 10 years old.
You hit them all over the store.
No, Storm Shadow was in there, and I was like,
you take them and you hide them, so you know exactly where they're at. You can go back and later.
Them. Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I already felt like I was breaking the rules to get inside this case that was cut open but not put out. Right. But I looked at all of them, and it was like there was Storm Shadow and everything. And my memory serves, I was like, you know what, though? I think there might have been fewer Baronesses per case, but no matter what, I picked it up, and I was like, wow, there's never been a Cobra girl. There are barely any girls, period. Right. I let Storm Shadow stay so I could buy what seemed really rare and exclusive, and that was the Cobra girl. So there you go.
Yay.
Yeah.
So you took the Baroness.
I took the Baroness.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And it was pretty cool. It was cool.
I have one more. I got a picture I got to ask about again.
Ask me. This is fun.
What were you doing here?
So that is me drawing. So here's two things. That's my drawing table, and we actually transported it over to Nickel Plate Arts, which is an art center in Noblesville, Indiana, just a little north of Indianapolis. And once a year, they put on an event there called Comic Book in a Day, where anybody who wants to participate can. It's for all skill sets. We basically start at about 9 or 10 in the morning and work until about 6 or 7 at night. And everybody writes and draws comic book pages. And when the whole thing is over, all the pages are gathered together into one book. So everybody gets to work on their own story and their own concept, but it has to be thought of that day, drawn that day, lettered that day, and it all has to be done in one day. And they've done it now for about 8 or 9, well, no more than that, about 10 years. And they always produce, literally, it's about 80 or 90 pages of art, and it's always published into 2 books. That's me drawing there. And people always ask me, what is that? So I literally have my drafting table that steep.
Right.
And I draw like that because it's much better for your back, and it's better for your neck too. What's problematic about it is I used to call that my drawing table. I now call it my penciling table, because when I ink, my inks are so wet, I can't work that vertically on my inks. I have a separate table that is laid flat for inks, because I'll just have a big runny mess if I don't.
Sure.
Right.
But it's also nice too, because then if somebody wants to watch you work at something, they can literally just stand behind you and see how you do it.
That's another Generation Xer right there. Leonard, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Oh man, G.I. Joe. It was so cool. Listen, so tell me if you guys as Joe fans had this problem, because I did. If you're about my age, you had all the Kenner Star Wars figures, and they were great. And then there was this weird thing that came out called G.I. Joe, which you knew of from bigger toys. Yeah, and the first time you handled one, it was such a mic drop. It was just like their knees bent and their elbows bent, and all this in their waist. And and like you'd wanted Luke Skywalker to have a lightsaber, instead he had a thing up his arm.
Yeah.
And these guys had helmets and backpacks, and you just felt like it was so crushing, because Star Wars was your baby, and this thing absolutely blew it out of the water. And that was really how I felt.
Did you ever realize the Phillips screw in the back of the G.I. Joe?
Realize, open it up?
Yeah.
But
you could take that one screw out of the back of the G.I. Joe, take the whole thing apart, and rebuild different G.I. Joes.
Yep.
And make your own
customs.
So we did that, but we used some A-Team figures because they were the right scale.
A-Team, I remember that.
And so I made this character, and I think his name was something like Livewire, and without greater explanation, he was, I love this, Cobra Electrician. He had yellow pants. But like, to me, I was like, well, that means he can do like bomb work, you know, and he can like do sabotage work. He's not really Cobra Saboteur, but he's kind of like a tech guy. Yeah. And he had a ski mask.
My special character was called the Ant.
Oh, that's good
because
too.
He could lift 10 times his weight.
Oh, so you made a superhero though.
Well,
which I'm fine with.
It's more like a mech suit kind of thing.
Right.
So
I will tell you, I was never a big Army guy, but G.I. Joe did win me over to like because I grew up a superhero fan, and the thing that I realized was cool about G.I. Joe was that they basically were all people, and I kind of for a while my mind really went into that realm. So when it started to turn into things with more lasers and space, I was like, you guys are moving away from your core here. That didn't work for me. I can handle a bridge layer, something that can carry a bridge,
right?
But I don't know about a space shuttle.
And the toys were, off the chart, and
I loved them.
And Zartan that changed color in the sun. I mean, what?
Yeah, and that's what's so cool. That toy, it really threw down the gauntlet. And if you guys haven't watched this documentary, don't watch it now.
Excellent. It's excellent.
I have to talk about one of the coolest scenes in it. Is they were going to spend all this money on the toys. They knew they were going to be nice. Mm-hmm. And you guys remember this? They talked about this guy was so proud of him, and somebody comes in from a bean counter and says, hey, we have to like save some money on painting. We have to eliminate some colors. We're going to save like 20%. And this was crushing this guy. And he said they were going to look so nice. I didn't want to do that. So he says, well, what if we just don't paint one of them? Can I make the others still just as nice? And they kind of say, sure. And that's why Snake Eyes is black.
Right.
And it ended up being the coolest choice.
Yeah. Solid black. No color to him at all.
That is like, that is somehow throwing an interception and getting a touchdown out of it. I don't know how that worked.
Leonard. Yeah, of course I remember that.
Yeah, we know Major Matt.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
I had just a couple of those because my parents were antique dealers who sold lamps, and I went to estate sales and flea markets, things like that, and I got a few of them. But I didn't get a hold of them until after Star Wars. So they were a little bit sterile, if that makes sense. I wanted, like, they were real space, and I wanted sci-fi space.
That's right.
You got that hook in my mouth already. That was the problem.
I want to show 2 more pictures here.
Please do.
This was cool on the post that I posted on here. What was this lucky day?
This is going to be bad. Oh, so this was pretty great. So first things first, that's at C2E2, and you don't have to look very closely to see giant bags under my eyes. I was absolutely exhausted because I was up drawing for 2 nights in a row doing commissions, and I didn't want anybody to go without. So I got up early. I was walking to my table, and this photo, I was holding this comic book, and I happened to say to one of my friends, please take a photo of this. So you guys probably recognize that as Detective Comics 27. That is the very first Batman comic book.
Right.
But that copy is graded 0.5 because along the spine, it has little holes in it because it was bound into one book. That was Bob Kane's copy. Bob Kane, who created Batman. Right. And so who had that is...
didn't he know that Steve Borak was going to come out with this grading system? And
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, it's Michael Carbonaro had it.
Buddy. That's awesome.
So here's what's incredible about it. I know a little bit about this book. So not only was that his copy, but it came out of a bound set, so it was disassembled. So there's I think a Detective 28, 29, 30 that are out there that match this. But Michael Carbonaro, a longtime comic book dealer, had this. I think he told me it was $750,000, and it might be cheap. And I remember I was holding it, and the thing that was so cool, and I wish I had done this, was he said, "Oh yeah, it came out of this bound spiral thing." Yep. And I said, "Weird. It's like the proportions on it are sort of strange for the holes and everything." And then he said, "Well, here it is, right here." So we had the empty binder. And I kind of wanted to buy the binder of all things, if you want to know the truth. Because I think on the spine, it might have said Batman or something or whatever. And I was like, wow, so that was Bob Kane's set. But what is really also cool about this book that is the part of the story that doesn't get talked about was, if I understand correctly, Bob Kane had saved a lot of his Batman stuff, but he had either a wife or a lover that got very mad and took a lot of his Batman stuff and threw it out and burned it or got rid of it.
Ouch.
And so the only reason that this survived was because he had bound it into a book and it was on the bookcase and it wasn't recognized as being Batman.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So he had that in a display case, and that's the sort of thing where you don't really get to, you can look at it, you don't get to hold that.
Right.
But I knew him, and we'd seen each other at shows for a long time, and he knew that I was pretty serious about it, and I held it up. And to be fair, when I posted on the internet, I made sure to thank him and tell everybody, Carbon Arrow has it. I just held it. You can own it. But the Peyton Mannings of the world need to, be the person to buy it, because I don't know who's going to get it. It's really a piece of history,
That's the thing that I've always talked about, and John has talked about as well. It's like, this is what, and please, Stuart, don't get offense when we say younger generation doesn't know these things. And that's one thing I appreciate about your show as well, that you talk about that. You give a little history on these things. They don't see this in these books. Look at the story right there. You told us about that book.
This is the thing. This is one of the things that is really sort of scary right now. We have, I started working at the Comic Carnival in 1986. Virtually everybody who was an important name in this industry was absolutely alive and in many cases active. I think Kirby dies in like 96 or 94, something like that.
Right.
And so now we're at this moment right now where we just about don't have any Golden Age guys left.
Yeah.
And most of the Silver Age guys have unfortunately passed as well. We've got John Romita, we've got Sal Buscema, there's Neil Adams, Steranko, and there are some others, but the list gets very short. And so I always kind of say, if you weren't there, you don't know.
Yep.
And that's a big thing. And so there are a few guys left that can still tell some stories, but when Stan Lee passed,
right,
there were a lot of stories that whatever version got told or whatever we already know about it, there's no more information to be had.
Right.
The learning is done.
Yep.
And the funny thing is like comic book collecting really takes off as an organized thing in the very early 60s. And by 66, there are enough people who are saving these things. You can find really, truly near mint copies of comics that are made in 1966. Very hard to find prior to 1960. And I bring that up because that's kind of a hard line in the sand.
It is.
It's hard to know much before 1960 because guys weren't paying attention the same way, or 66 even.
Right.
And so, one of the stories I told here recently that I've mentioned to a couple people, real aficionados have said, "Oh, I've never heard about this and I didn't know about this." So here's one I love, but this is recent, relatively speaking, modern at least.
Sure.
Dark Knight Returns comes out in 86. It's been a long time, but there were comic shops around. Lots of people bought that thing new, put it in a bag. People remember that vacuum formed plastic promo piece.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you feel like, I was paying attention. Well, listen to this. There was an ad in Batman and DC comic books that were on the rack with the regular copies that offered a subscription to Dark Knight. Everybody forgets that even if you couldn't get to a comic shop, you could cut out this ad. So I had a friend who lived in rural Indiana, and he did that. So he ordered Dark Knight from DC through the mail, not a comic shop, and he didn't get his, and he was rather bummed out. So what happened was he actually did get it, but the ad said that DC was going to only sort of honor like 1,500 copies of this for mail order, which is absurd. I don't know why they'd put the lid on this.
Right.
But he got his, but they arrived later. And when he got his, he got second print copies.
Wow.
So which I think is really uncool. If you hey, I pre-ordered it.
Sure. It should be the first printing.
Try that with your comic shop, pre-order, the new Mary Jane #1 or something and have your comic shop give you a second print. That won't go over well. But my point being was, a lot of people told me, they said, "Oh, I never knew anybody who got that in the mail." And I didn't know that the ones that went through the mail were second prints. I think he got his #1 and #2 together. And he even told me that some of them came folded. Now, the thing that I'm trying to nail down with him for sure is, did it come in a specific wrapper? Is there a DC Comics paper wrapper with Dark Knight on it? Because if there is, that's the coolest thing in the world. I don't, they mailed it in something. It wasn't just a raw book. and he couldn't remember. So I'm trying to track down people who got one in the mail, and apparently there were only 1,500 people who did.
Interesting.
Was there a custom Dark Knight wrapper? And if it is, I want one. Right?
Yep.
That's cool.
They probably don't exist if there was only 1,500 of them, and then most likely they opened them.
And and did they save it? So I've got a couple copies that were subscription copies of like X-Men. They were wrapped in plastic, and they have a card in it with an address label.
Right.
Those are from like the 90s and the 2000s. And so it's one of these things, if you were around and alive for it and you lived through it, I talk to people sometimes who will say something that they don't think is that big because they just happen to live through it, but you can add the pieces up. The original owner of the Comic Carnival told me about Russ Cochran getting the rights to reprint all the the Tales from the Crypt and all that.
Ooh.
And yeah, and so
my favorites.
This is a really adorable story because there weren't a lot of comic book reprints yet.
Hold on for 1 second. I want you to.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do another photo
and talk about. No, I want you to talk about your page and your what you're selling
Shiver in
and
the
what
dark.
you're showing.
I need to do that.
Please.
Do it I get carried away. I can talk about lots of
No,
stuff.
I know. And I want you to have your time. So, I mean, do it again because people are coming in slowly. And
here's the plug.
On the rewind as well.
The thing that sort of predicated us having this sort of presentation today is that I have a Kickstarter going for my self-published comic book called Shiver in the Dark. If you guys have been longtime fans of me, you may have come across this. If you're just discovering me, this is actually the first comic I ever published. It came out in 2001. I made 3 issues of it and was busy on the 4th, but I ended up getting hired by DC Comics and worked for them and lots of other publishers, IDW. I'm doing lots of covers for Dynamite right now. I did a Walking Dead exclusive. I've done Joker covers. I'm currently doing covers for Evil Ernie and lots of stuff. But so other comics got in the way, but I really kind of wanted to reconnect and finish up my Shiver in the Dark story. So I'm making a brand new series of Shiver in the Dark that I'm working on right now. But to get everybody ready for it, it's the 20th anniversary of the first series, so I'm reprinting those, and those are on Kickstarter right now. They are a really nice square-bound deluxe format. I've added new covers inside, back, front, plus bonus pages of art. They're limited to only 300 sets, and there are some really cool variations you can get, like I've made some sketch covers. And all of these are going to come encapsulated by CBCS with my custom label.
Beautiful.
I'm the only artist who has a custom label for this. That features Grace from the Shiver in the Dark comic book. And I've got some metal covers on there as well. And to be honest, the big reason that I'm reprinting this, 2 things. It is the 20th anniversary, but I wanted to promote the new series that's coming out. I've got some all-star artists doing some covers for the new series. Typically, I have the rule, I don't reveal who they are until I've got the art in hand because people get busy.
Yep.
But I can tell you, one of them is already done. I did get a really nice cover from Jay Lee.
Did we get an exclusive sound or anything? Hint?
Nope. And the funny thing about it is, so I really
John and I get an exclusive anything?
Well, so here's why you don't get it, because
I got you.
No, because I'm a big fan of Jay's work. I really like his work. His work is typically only colored by a few people. His wife typically does his coloring. Right. And he has said some really nice things about my work, and he likes my coloring. And so I'm kind of spoiled because I wanted to color his cover. And he said, well, I typically have my wife do it. And I said, well, what if I want to do it? You like my coloring. So we worked out the deal. And I thought this was very interesting, and I was very flattered. He said, I will let you color it, but here's the deal. You have to color it. You can't hire a colorist. If you do it, that's fine. And so I said, okay, I agreed to it. So the reason I'm not showing it to you is I haven't colored it yet. Gotcha. I'm working on my current Kickstarter, so that's next.
Okay, that's exciting though. I mean, the thing is, you're still doing stuff with it. You're still doing stuff, and that's fantastic. So if you guys don't, sorry.
I was just saying, I'm really flattered that so many people, even people who bought the first series want the new editions with the bonus material, and lots of fans who've gotten to know me over the years from either Joker, Kiss, Walking Dead, whatever. Now they're buying the series, and they didn't know about it because the new series picks up where this first one leaves off. I'm glad that I've made this for all those new fans.
That's awesome. So Campbell on here says, so what is the project you're most proud of?
I got 3 answers for that. So the first one is not one you're going to be satisfied with because it sounds like a plug, but it really is my
All
self-published
good.
Shiver in the
Please.
Dark.
I think that's beautiful. So just out of curiosity, show that.
That's the metal.
How is it possible to get that?
So this one here, if you go to the Kickstarter campaign and you select, here it is in paper. If you select basically any tier that you want to buy, all the metal covers are available as add-ons. There are only 25 images of each cover in metal. So it has to be added as an add-on. As well, you can also get your comic books graded by CBCS, and that's an add-on as well. I kind of had to set it up that way because all the books are limited in numbers, and I needed it to where people could order different things, but not have one thing sell out in one level, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So it was a little tricky to set up, but you can find them. You just have to select your first pledge and then hit back this project, or I think it's a big green button that says pledge, and then the add-ons appear.
Got it.
But the reason Shiver in the Dark is usually what I point to is what I'm most proud of, is because it was hardest. I had to write it, draw it, letter it, color it, publish it. I had to figure out how to print it. I had to work out deals with Diamond. It was the tallest mountain for me to climb. But when I give that answer, everybody says, yeah, that's obvious. So give me something that's, a little bit more out there, a little bit more conventional.
Okay, so
I think The Walking Dead is one of them, because that was an exclusive variant. A lot of artists wanted to do it. And, if I say, hey, I want to do one, it's like, sure, everybody wants to do one. It was a special thing I had to be picked to do. And then the last answer, and this is going to be very quick, but I'm ripping this off from comic artist and writer Bruce Jones.
okay.
I was sitting next to him at a show in Detroit, and somebody asked him, of your entire career, what are you most proud of? And so this was his answer. I'm giving it now as well. I'm most proud that this is what I've been able to do for 20 years. And that really is it, because this is a hard industry to get in, and it's a hard industry to stay in. And there's people always talk about breaking in. And I'd always heard people say there isn't really breaking in. You get to do something, and then you have to renew it and constantly get the next job.
Right.
And I remember him saying, it terrified me. It was my third ever show I'd done. And he said, I think I'm most proud that I never had to do anything else. And I thought, why would you ever have to do anything else? Because I think he's wildly skilled.
Right.
But in retrospect, there are a lot of people who've come into comics and then drifted out of it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
There are new artists, there are new writers, there are new projects. Tastes change, people's skills change. Plus, I was doing this in the moment when I was starting, when digital was really coming on. There's a lot of older artists who had a really hard time keeping up with the digital workings of this industry.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you make the metal covers? I got a question in the chat.
Yeah, there are a couple printers who do them. So it's just like printing on paper. You need to find someone who prints them on metal. In my case, I had to find somebody who could make them just the right size of comics. But the funny thing is, there are more and more people doing it. I happened to find somebody who said they could do it, but I'll bet you could almost go on Google and in about 10 minutes find someone who could make them.
I was going to say, you've been working with Dynamite, and I know that they do metal covers.
They do, and I'm not involved with what Dynamite's doing, but so many people are making metal covers, and it leads back to what I said earlier about technology in this.
Yeah.
This hobby is growing and evolving really right under our noses in ways that we didn't see. It was pretty stable from like 37 to the introduction of the direct market. I mean, the price guide was a big shift. Introduction of comic book bags. But look at what we've had just the last couple of years. Metal's new. We've got grading companies.
Yep.
We've got things like Kickstarter where people are selling directly to their fans. It's like the Wild West right now.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like don't look at it sort of like, look how far we've gone, but look how far we still have to go. Because I think that we're going to have more and more.
Me and John have said
ideas.
it a few times. It's kind of like a Renaissance period right now, if you think about it.
There's a lot of revitalization in comics.
Big time.
From the dark ages of the 90s.
What's that?
From the dark ages called the 90s.
I don't think they're as dark as people think. I'm not saying you're wrong. Money can screw things up, and there were a lot of things that shifted in the 90s, right?
Sure. Oh yeah, we know. Yeah.
There were some good things that came out of there, but there was other things that came out of the dark ages too. So
yeah, I tend to. Here's the funny thing about it. I think that I don't think they would have been called the Dark Ages, and I really mean this, if the '80s hadn't been so great. And I always tell.
The '80s were awesome.
So here's my plug on this. It's not just G.I. Joe or whatever, but think about this for a second. There's this little Goldilocks period that I really think about all the time, and I overly romanticize this. I think that 1985 to 1989 is this really, really special time. So here's what you have. DC is not exactly sure what they're going to do. They have the Crisis. There's a little bit of concern if they can keep up with Marvel, and so they push in all their chips. They get Frank Miller on Batman, John Byrne on Superman, George Perez on Wonder Woman, and they've made really good comic books of the three core characters. Around this time, you also have Fantagraphics and independent publishers coming up with things like neat stuff, and this kind of, Judge Dredd is coming over from Great Britain. It looks like all kinds of people are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. All kinds of people are having great ideas of what they can do with comics. And then 1989 happens. And 1989 is the Batman movie. And that changes things more than anything else. The big change that it did was it meant that big business realized there could be big money in comics. But in the moment before that, all these smart, interesting, creative people were doing really cool things under the radar. And when there isn't big money looking over it, checking to see if everything is going to be overly sensitive or a little bit too risky, you get all this freedom. And I was fortunate I got to work in that comic shop when that happened. And I really kind of feel like, I don't know if The Killing Joke can come out after the first 1989 Batman movie. Right?
Killing Joke was dark.
Yeah, you bet.
Dark. I mean, if you were, and if there's people out there that haven't read The Killing Joke, that was a dark story.
Absolutely.
Right.
And actually probably one of my faves.
Yeah, it was my favorite too.
Yeah, I really like Gotham by Gaslight too, but that was
wonderful.
Yeah.
Another thing that happens at this moment that, like, you talk about, jarring things that happen in The Killing Joke. One of my favorite series is Cosmic Odyssey. And if you know what Jon Stewart does in that comic book, that probably wouldn't happen. If they make a movie out of that, they just kind of can't have Jon Stewart do what he does in that. I can't give away spoilers, but I mean, it's not.
Well, it's been really, you know what? Have you noticed though, like in the last, me and John have experienced this, but have you noticed the really oversensitive environments?
I think here's what's happened. This is what I think. I think that
a lot of our older stuff we can't even talk about or show because people get overly sensitive about it.
Well, this used to be a very fringe thing. So if you bought comic books, you probably bought them at the spinner rack, and it was a thing that was aimed for kids for a long time. And then you had this period I'm talking about in the 80s, when the thing kind of grew up, but business hadn't really come into the same way. Consider this. When I was first putting together my Shiver in the Dark comic book, it was around 2001. 2000 was having the idea, and I was working in a restaurant because I was just graduating college. Right. And I remember telling people, I said, that I'm working on a comic book, and I met all these people who'd say, "Oh my gosh, I love comic books."
Yeah.
And this became the trap. I used to say to them, I say, "Oh, really? What's the last comic you bought?"
Yeah.
And they didn't have an answer.
No.
And what was happening was they kept saying they love comics, and what they really meant was they loved superheroes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They were movies or video games, or everybody said, "Oh, I love Spider-Man. I've got a Spider-Man T-shirt and I love it. I've got the Superman S." But that's not reading comics, and that's not buying comics.
Right.
And so we've got this weird thing right now that is really big, where if you say comic books, people think that means an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
And that is not a comic book. It's not on paper. And I'm not trying to draw too harsh of lines, because we like comics and we like Avengers movies, but they're different things.
Sure. I love Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Yeah.
I can't get through a Guardians of the Galaxy comic book.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. But as a comic book lover, I think you got that backwards. I always love comics more than movies. But my point being is, when you have something that is for such a broad audience, it becomes really hard to make something that everybody's going to like.
Right. And you can't.
Right.
Camp has got a question for you. Who's your favorite artist or writer?
So I grew up a Neil Adams fan. He was easily my biggest influence. My favorite, and because I'm a Batman fan, I'm really a fan of like 70s Batman. You know, my favorite Batman writer, everybody says it's supposed to be Danny O'Neill. It's not. It's Len Wein. And Len Wein is a co-creator of Swamp Thing. And one of the things that I really like about Len Wein's stories that I think really affected me is that a lot of his stories don't have tidy endings. And I really, really, really like that. There is a great Batman story where he battles the werewolf, 255.
Right.
Yep.
And Batman can't defeat the werewolf, and the werewolf is they're on a big building during a rainstorm, and the werewolf is struck by lightning, and it falls, and Batman goes down to find the werewolf, and he can't find the body, and he doesn't know what happened, and there's no resolution, which I think to me is a much creepier ending.
Sure.
And Len Wein did that all the time, where he led you to something, and you're ready to get that nice closure. You can go to bed. Joker's in jail, and he won't give it to you.
Right.
And I love that. So those are my favorite, the guys I grew up with that I love most. But you know, everybody's got lots of influences as well. Michael Golden was a guy I really liked growing up. His Micronauts are great. It'll surprise you. I'm really influenced by Peter Bagge from the first 4 or 5 issues of Neat Stuff.
Neat Stuff.
Mainly, I was just the right age, and he was drawing in this wild, cartoony style that was beyond Don Newton Don Martin for Mad Magazine. He was just crazy.
Yep.
So, but this is the funny thing. Good work can influence you, but you also have to be in a mindset to get it. And I think I saw that when I was in 8th grade. And it was, again, of this sort of 1986 moment of, whoa, what is this? Like, I was used to a comic book being, you know, just Herb Trimpe, you know, Godzilla.
Talking about Neil Adams. Here we go. Here's some Neil Adams love. I just got this the other day. This actually came in the mail. Check this out. Boom.
Oh, I love that book. Love it.
All Neil Adams. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So if you don't know Neil, and here's what's funny about Neil, I'm pretty certain he inked that cover.
Yeah. He did the art.
Well, I think he penciled it, but I think he also inked it. So a lot of his work at DC was inked by Dick Giordano, but I think he did that one by himself.
Yeah, cover by Neil Adams. Yeah.
Yeah.
But very cool.
And I will tell you, I am so fortunate. I cannot get past this. You know, he was my childhood hero, and I am not exaggerating. That guy has done so many really, really cool favors for me as an adult that I never expected to have happen. I know Neil got sepsis about a year ago or so, and he got sick. He's still with us, and he's still drawing, and I'm really happy for it because he is a treasure.
Yeah, he is.
If you haven't had a chance to see him or look up his work, he's still with us, and you should. Yep. Because I think you have a real pillars that would be awesome. Still with us, you know, of guys who are just mammoth. You know, you go, in my mind, you go from him, and then you have to go as young as like John Byrne before you get to another person who's just huge.
Right.
So,
yep.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, you can't see a whole lot of older books without coming across Neil Adams' art.
Yep.
He's great. He's absolutely great. I kind of have wondered several times if I was the last guy to get in this industry as an artist that was a fan of his work, new as a child.
Right.
And I'm just right at the age to where he was kind of leaving comics. So they reprinted the House that Haunted Batman and Detective Comics when I was like 5, and Superman versus Muhammad Ali came out. And so I got those, and I was just a couple Superman family covers that came out, and then he was kind of gone.
Right.
And I remember being in the lunchroom in 8th grade talking to kids, and they talked about Perez, and they said, "Who do you like?" And I like Neil Adams, and that was just, who in the world is that? But that's the funny thing about this. That's, you know, it's the Generation X Men show. Those couple years, they make a big difference.
Yeah.
Right. You know, whether or not what you were exposed to when you were 5. I saw Star Wars in the theater when I was 5. I think it's about my first movie. One of my very good friends is a commercial artist who does like pharmaceutical ads. He loves Star Wars bigger than anybody I know, but he's 10 years older.
Right.
He saw Star Wars and he was 14.
Right.
You know, that thing being new when you're 14 is very different than when you're 5.
Right. I think I was 6 maybe when I saw it.
Yeah.
And but I was 6 also when my uncle took me to see Alien.
Oh, that's the one
theater.
I wasn't allowed to see or have.
Yeah, well, and my mother felt the same way.
Yeah.
And so, you know what that means? You can't see it, but on the shelf behind me right back there is the Kenner Alien.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
He has the original Kenner Alien.
If I had just been allowed to see it or do it, probably wouldn't have
Awesome.
cared. But the fact the answer was no, it burned in me. I had to
Right.
get it, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I didn't sleep for 2 weeks, so yeah, I still have nightmares about it.
Well, here's a funny story about it. My mom didn't want me to see it, and so
She was right.
Well, she was right, but let's see if you guys remember this. Back then, we used to be able to go down to the toy aisle of like Airway or Zaire.
Yep.
And there was this like Fisher Price thing that was like a little movie camera and you'd shove a cartridge in it.
Yep.
Do you remember this?
Yes.
And it was designed so that even though it was in the box, you could try it.
Right.
Yep.
And they made one of Alien.
Wow.
So I got to see the Alien and I went home and I drew the Alien and my mother was terrified. Because she came to me and she said, how did you see that? And I told her and she was just like, oh God, it was the one thing I didn't want you to see. Okay. And now I'm drawing it. So, you know, how awful is it for mother when she thinks, okay, I've kept him from it. And then
he's safe.
Yeah, that's what you think. I learned what it looked like.
I love it.
Yeah.
So are you going to be at, have you ever been to Heroes Con?
I have. I don't think I'm going to go this year. I want to. I can't do all of them. It's really good. Heroes
Con's a big one, and it's really specified for, you know, comic book artists. You know,
it is.
Now
I always feel that it has a sister show, and the sister show is the Baltimore Comic Con.
Right.
If you like one, then you like the other. And I know I'm going to Baltimore this year. Should be at San Diego. I'll be at C2E2, Indiana Comic Con. I already said Lexington. There are several more.
Mega?
I can't because that overlaps a show that I'm doing in Muncie. Christina Blanche, who is the writer of Good Boy, a Source Point book, is putting on a show, and she's been a big supporter.
I got two more questions. One
Ask
from Sample here, and this one was, have you ever done any work for Marvel?
Only one piece. Only one. So I've done a whole lot for DC and Warner's, but my one that I did for Marvel is it's a printed card it's for the Versus game, and it is Thanos crushing Spider-Man. Yeah. Nice. And it was kind of funny because I think I was going to do another one. Like I initially was asked to do something that was like Silver Surfer, and then they changed the art director.
Yep.
And then.
Okay.
And that was it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Other than all the stuff, any independent titles, have you had an opportunity to read anything indie? I guess you could say indie, that's not Marvel DC related that you really like, artist and books or stories that you like?
So across the board. So my thing is, if I haven't read it and it's good, I'm interested in it. So I have a bad habit of finding out about what's really good and then reading it a year too late.
Yeah.
But Stray Dogs, the Tony Fleece book, that is great. But I have to warn you. So Tony and I are friends.
Yeah.
So I knew Tony, and we always talk about movies. We don't talk much about comic books. We always talk about movies and what we like. And so when he told me he was doing a book and it was about like puppies and things, I thought, this is not what I would expect you to be doing. Well, I read it and it made total sense. So it's good. I like that. Yep. I have to tell you, an independent creator who sort of crossed over into Marvel and DC. This is going back to older stuff again. I really like.
Okay. No, all good.
Rich Heaton and Tom McQueenie, who did Roach Mill and then got to do a couple wacky issues of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And they also did The Demon for DC. They always make goofy comics.
Yeah.
But they're just still superhero-y. And I think I always say this, if it's acting or comics or whatever, comedy is hard to do.
Yeah,
the best actors, the best artists are people who can do comedy and drama. And those guys are really good about doing both. And that was also a comic book that grabbed me when I was young, where I kind of felt like, ooh, you can.
Which one was it again?
It was called Roach Mill, and he was like this intergalactic like bounty hunter thing. So he might be, you know, a crime boss might say, I need you to put a hit out for me. You know, go take down whatever. It could be the mayor. And why do you hate the mayor? It's like, because the mayor's gonna like build a street that I don't want to be built, and then the mayor might be like a fish in a fishbowl because it's this bizarre science fiction-y kind of world. And so in Roach Mill, these guys just said the characters can look like anything. Here's a good example. Roach Mill gets called in one time because somebody is watching a movie and someone in the movie won't stop talking. Like, he's running the movie for me. Get on the cell phone. Please kill this guy in front of me who's running the movie. Okay, but the guy in front who's running the movie is a two-headed monster. And somehow one of the heads has seen the movie, but the other hasn't. And so the one movie keeps telling the other one, it's like, oh, this is a really cool part. This is where the killer comes into the room. And so, like, I just kind of read it and I was like, they keep thinking of ways that it's fun in a way I haven't experienced. And I like that.
Right.
Cool. But some other independent books I really, really liked. See, the problem is right now, there are so many that are so good.
There is a lot. I'm just curious about your favorite.
There was a book called, I think it's called Low. It was an image book, came out a while ago. And every time I pick that up, I just like, I find myself reading it and then I get distracted because it's colored so well.
Yeah.
And that thing just blows me away. It's, I will tell you, as someone who draws comics, it can be daunting. There are times I go to the comic book store and I take a deep breath because it's really easy to have drawn a piece you think is really good. You're going to show everybody how awesome you are, and go to the comic shop and your ego goes, boo, you can put right into check.
Yeah.
Something really awesome has come out and you just say, I got to work a bit harder. I'm trying to think what else has come out. You know, everybody's reading The Children. Something to kill the children.
Department of Truth.
Department of Truth. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I see that's one I'm not caught up on. I need to read that one.
How about Philadelphia? Have you read that?
I hear that one's good, and I haven't read that.
That one's good.
It's had some great covers. What have I come across? So I mean, here's my rule of thumb. Now that I've got too many loves, too many interests, and this has worked really, really well for me. And if you guys aren't ripping off this idea or already doing it yourself, I'm surprised. So I know comic books really well, and I know art and painting really well. I like music, I like movies, I like lots of other things. I don't have time to investigate all of it. So what I do is I find friends who know this stuff better than I do. And as long as I know comic books well enough, I've got one friend who knows music so much better than I do, and he knows what music I like. So I just tell him, you tell me what music I need to listen to, because you've stayed on top of it. I don't have to look for it anymore. And I'll tell you which comics you should be reading. So that works out really well. And so my local comic shop, they know me fairly well. Tim Reynolds is one of the gentlemen who owns it. I'll walk in there and he'll just almost like walk me through the rack. This is what you need to see. And I remember when Something's Killing the Children came out, the very first issue, you know, he was smart. He said, this is good. You should check this out. And okay, that's what I did. Stray Dogs was kind of the same way too. But that one I lit up on because I was like, oh, this is that book that Tony's making. Right. It's so awful when somebody you know somebody who's your friend makes a book and you grab it and you're like, okay, I really want to like this. Right. Because they're my friend, you know. Yeah. And then you read it and you're like, yeah, that's happened to me. Not what I expected it to be. And then it's really good. And then you're kind of like crushed and hurt because you kind of feel like,
man, he did better than me.
Yeah. That's exactly it. That stings, you know.
Animal Castle is also another one that I would recommend.
I've not heard of that.
Animal Castle is good.
Okay, yeah. Animal Castle is a really good one. Think Animal Farm. Yeah. Okay. It's kind of along that line. Yeah. But it's really good and it's got really good artwork in it. And
that's awesome.
Sucks you into the story. So I would recommend the Animal Castle.
Okay. I will. So something went wrong because Tim didn't show that to me, which tells me either you're wrong or he's wrong, or, and this is the wild card. Yep. Or he knows what I liked and he thought that wouldn't overlap with it, so he might have done that, which is the dangerous part of having people recommend things to you. Sure. Yep. I don't know. There are so many good books right now. I truly can't keep up on all of them. One of my real joys, and you guys all have this, is when you discover something that's really cool that you didn't know about. Right. Yep. I went to a small convention in Columbus, Ohio called SPACE, which stood for Small Press Alternative Comics Expo. Okay. And I met this guy there named Fonzie Davis who was making these little Xerox books, which were like, they looked like Steranko romance comics if everything happened in this really sort of dialed up Peter Max kind of hip hop world. Sure. And I mean, the kid was like 18 and I just said, holy cow, what have you got? And it was like, everything on his table was like this many books. That includes every copy he had. And I said, well, I would like to buy all of these. Yeah. And I just bought everything he had, and I took him back to Indianapolis, and I said to my friends, you need this, you need this, you need that. And the guy went on and made some more comic books, and I think he actually plays a lot of rock and roll now. But to go to walk right in front of something and just say, I love this and I want it all is the best feeling. It happens about once every 5 years.
Right.
He was great.
Very cool. Stuart, do you have anything else? I think we're like hour and a half now. We actually went over a half hour.
we can go over. I can always go over. I've never done one of these where I didn't just talk for forever about it.
Early shows, that's nice.
So a few things I'll tell you about.
Yes.
Please, if you like the Shiver in the Dark comic book, please give it a shot. Check out the Kickstarter campaign. These really, really are high-end deluxe books. They're only 300 made. There's free shipping in the USA, and also we've triggered the $16,000 stretch goal. So everybody who orders the comics, you're going to get a bonus book with it of unpublished art. So that helps bring the price down. Everybody gets a little bit more that way.
Keep showing your books while you're talking.
Oh, yes.
There you go. Yep,
there's
there you
number
go.
1, 2.
There you go.
Where's 3? So I have so many here. There's issue 3. Sorry, that's the A cover. But I'll tell you, I'm going to be doing a lot of shows. The second series is still coming. I'm doing lots of covers for Dynamite. The question that can't believe I didn't get asked all the time is, am I doing commissions? And the answer is yes and no. If you come see me at a show or a store signing, any place where I'm in person, I'm happy to draw for you then, and you can get a piece usually that day on the spot. I'm not doing take-home commissions right now because I got to get this Kickstarter done. The other thing is, this really is one of the best hobbies out there. I'm really flattered to be a part of it. I always say that the thing that makes it such a good hobby is that you can share what you love with somebody else who has the same love you do. So I know people are still a little afraid during the pandemic, but try to connect with all your other comic book fans, friends, and lovers, and tell them what they should read. I didn't hear about what you call it, Animal Castle.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I have something cool to look for myself. So
also another one I gotta
and keep the community good.
I'm a big horror guy.
So am I.
Nightmare Blog.
Nightmare Blog. It's a great name.
Nita Hall's Nightmare Blog.
It's good.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a big fan of it.
It's fine. I love it. And I've had a good time. And so I have to ask you this. I know I'm going to have a new series coming out. I know I'm going to have new books coming out. Will you guys bring me back?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you that. I was just going to.
Well, I mean, I had fun. I mean, we ran a half hour over, and I hardly even answered any questions, so nobody really gave me any tough ringers.
I know. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I got to show that because I didn't say this, but Campbell is nailing me here. He's like, do you do octopus art?
Tentacle art, yeah.
Because okay.
He's got a fetish. So
no, it's not a fetish. I have a tentacle thing because of H.P. Lovecraft. Cthulhu. That's
so, okay. I drew an issue of
squids or octopuses on a comic book I have in my collection. So I gravitate towards those covers.
I drew an issue of 30 Days of Night Infestation, which was 30 Days of Night versus H.P. Lovecraft. And I got to design a Lovecraftian model in there, and it is all tentacles. That's all the thing is.
I wonder, do we have it, John? I wonder if we have it. What did you put? What did you put it in?
Right?
What was it called?
It was a one shot, so I think it was 30 Days of. I think it was called 30 Days of Night Infestation. If I've got it in the other room.
I have a 30 days.
Yeah,
because I remember we had that one, and I'm pretty sure you took it because it had tentacles on it. If not, I still have it here.
Then I have some of your work then too.
In general, let me say this, and you guys can read between the lines. I am happy to draw octopuses. Tentacle art, as I've seen, tends to often turn into a different sort of thing.
Yes, me too. But that's not what I'm talking about.
But here's what's so bad about this. So in my house here, my wife and I bought a house about 3 years ago. We have got wild asparagus that grows, and you have to remind yourself those aren't tentacles because they just look like wild asparagus. Just looks like tentacles coming out of the ground, and I'll do asparagus, I'll do squids, but sometimes tentacle is too much.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, guys.
Any others? Let's hit me.
I think that's going to be done for now.
I think that's fine.
John, do you have any more questions, bud?
Yeah.
Please.
No, well, I wish you were going to Heroes Con, but yeah.
So I'll tell you what, write Shelton the message and tell him to bring me, because usually what happens is I just have to get a hold of Shelton, and then he has had me as a guest before, and I'd love to come, but he's busy.
Definitely can
Everybody's
come back,
busy.
Stuart, anytime. Absolutely. You know that. Now that we had more of a hookup, because we were having a long delay there with communication problems.
I thought this works great. So
This was
also,
excellent.
so you guys, for this, because this is your third show, you typically talk a lot about 70s, 80s, and early 90s stuff, because
We
This is-
talk about
you're
whatever
actually-
we can think of at the
Yeah.
time.
It's
That's
our
okay.
sixth show. You're our sixth show. This is the
Sixth.
sixth show. Yeah,
Okay.
6 shows now.
Yeah, our show usually consists of, hey, what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah, pretty dry.
I like that.
We're
Thank you,
trying
man.
to find that happy medium, you know.
Well,
And yeah,
I will tell you this, the funny thing is, and I don't think people have paid enough attention to this, something really cool that has come out of this pandemic is this sort of podcast thing, which we
Yeah.
had before, but not on this scale. And the funny thing about it is, I think there are a lot of stories and a lot of information that's come out in this format that otherwise was not going to be told or could have been lost.
right, exactly.
You know,
Very
we
true.
mentioned Neil Adams.
Yep.
Neil Adams used to do a lot of shows. In the wake of doing shows for, a year and a half, he was on live almost every day telling stories. He pulled out artwork that he drew when he was 16 and showed it on his live feed.
Wow.
Like, that was really cool. So
very cool.
we've got a golden age right now, and let's not look past it.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's basically building an encyclopedia, so to say, of information that won't be lost.
Yep.
I certainly hope that's true.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a gentleman named George Hagenauer, who is probably the person who knows more about comics than anybody I've ever met. He helped start the Chicago Comic Con years ago. And here, I'll go on this on a story of something that could have been lost.
Oh, good.
He told me about the very first comic art auction that happened at the Chicago Comic Con. And they put it on largely so that they could get some free television advertising. That's a longer story. But he said, oh, yeah, so like Rich Kaz ran the auction. And I said, hold on, wait a minute, Rich Kaz? I don't know if you guys know who Rich Kaz is. But I said, Sven Gulli, the guy who has that TV show, Sven Gulli, about all the horror movies?
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, it was him. He was like 19, and no one wanted to run the charity art auction, so we made him do it. And I thought, my mind was blown.
Wow.
It was like, that's how small the comic book world is. But this guy who has a syndicated TV show about horror movies ran the first comic art auction in Chicago.
Wow.
Who knew?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stories that are coming out that are hopefully getting recorded.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, this is something I've talked with John with. It's like, I've done the Nerdy Collector Show for about 3 years, and I'm taking a step back. I won't start it up until the end of October. Got one more show coming up next Saturday.
Okay.
And I do a lot of YouTubers, artists that come on there, try to find people that would like to come on the show, just talk about themselves, just like we're doing here. And at the same time, with John realizes it or not, this is kind of like, this is out there forever in YouTube. I've done everything live. I've never done any. I've done maybe a couple things pre-recorded where you do the editing and all that, but this is live and out there. And it's something that our kids are going to see later on down our lives. When we're long and gone, it's always going to be there. So it's kind of like an open, that's how I see it at the same time, and having a blast doing it and sharing it with people, which is fun.
Yeah. It is good to get this stuff down. And truly, I mean, there is going to be a day when, people are going to ask these questions, somebody's going to really, hopefully this won't happen, but somebody may tune into this and say, so this guy says that there were people who got copies of Dark Knight in the mail and they were folded.
Yep.
That may be, the only way that's recorded. So I don't want to think we're overly too important, but it could happen.
No, exactly.
Anyway, thanks for having me. I'd love to come back.
Stick around, Stuart. Okay,
okay.
Don't go anywhere when we leave here. John, sorry, Stuart. What you got coming up, buddy?
Oh, I've got nothing coming up right now. I am perfectly happy and content. Going to change my website over eventually. So, yeah. Hey, if you need somebody that has a comic book shop, if you don't have anybody local, don't take away from your LCS. But if you need somebody to go through to purchase books with a 25% discount, hit me up on IG, Marvelous Comics 73. Be glad to help you out.
Cool.
Pretty good.
I want to say thank you, everybody, for showing up in the chat today. Catch us on the rewind, please. All the links down below. I actually have it in the chat. I'm going to leave this chat link up as well so people can see it on the recording. You'll know how to get a hold of Stuart, get all the special items. I know I am. Yeah, me on board.
Excuse me, I really appreciate it. I do.
Absolutely.
So, and also, like I said, this next second series is coming. When you buy things off this first series, it gives me more of a budget to buy some better cover artists for the second series.
Okay.
So
excellent. All right. See you guys next week, next Sunday. Again, adios.